Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time, we're going to be exploring the fascinating mystery of how life arose on Earth.
Yeah, it's a really, really big question.
Yeah, it is a big one. I mean, just think about it. We share about 60% of our DNA with a banana.
It's amazing. It sounds unbelievable.
It really does. But, it actually points to the fact that all life on Earth shares a common ancestor. And scientists call that ancestor, LUCA, the last universal common ancestor.
Exactly, and that's what we're going to be focusing on today.
Right. We'll be using this YouTube video that you shared as our guide.
Right.
To unpack some of the most interesting scientific theories and discoveries that shed light on how non-living matter made that incredible transformation into the first living organisms. So maybe we should start with a really basic question. What does it even mean to be alive?
Well, it might seem simple, but scientists have been grappling with that question for centuries. Early on, a lot of people believed in this idea of a life force, this intangible something that breathed life into inanimate matter.
Oh, like a magical spark.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a magical spark that animated things.
Interesting.
Yeah, but, towards the end of the 18th century, scientists like Lavoisier started doing experiments that challenged that idea. He realized that living beings, like a guinea pig, and non-living things like burning coal, shared similar chemical processes. And that kind of suggested that life wasn't driven by some mystical force, but by chemistry, by the laws of physics and chemistry. It was a really radical idea at the time.
So no magic involved.
No magic, just chemistry.
Got it. So, okay, even if it's just chemistry, how do you actually define life?
Yeah, it's a lot more complicated than you might think. One biophysicist, his name was Edward Trefanoff, he actually found over 123 different definitions of life.
Wow.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy. But let's focus on one definition that captures the essence of what it means to be alive, and I think it's this. Life is self-reproduction with variation.
Self-reproduction with variation.
Yeah. So basically, it means that living things can create copies of themselves, but those copies are never perfectly identical.
Right. Like, think about a litter of puppies.
Exactly.
Each puppy inherits traits from his parents, but it's also unique in certain ways.
Exactly.
That's the variation part.
And that variation is actually really crucial. It allows for adaptation and evolution.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So we've talked about this idea of life, but to really understand what makes something alive, we need to look at kind of the 4 key pillars of life.
Yeah, absolutely. We need to look at complexity, metabolism, boundaries, and replication.
So starting with complexity, I can see how that applies to humans. We have all these organs and systems.
Right.
But what about single-celled organisms? Are they complex?
Absolutely. Even a single-celled organism is incredibly complex.
Yeah.
They have all this intricate molecular machinery for energy production and waste removal and all these essential functions.
Well, they're like a miniature city.
Exactly. Bustling with activity at a microscopic level.
Wow. Okay. I like that analogy a lot. So what about metabolism?
Metabolism is all about energy processing.
Okay.
So living things, they take in nutrients, they break them down, and use that released energy to power everything they do, growing, reproducing, even responding to their environment.
Got it. So metabolism is like the fuel.
It is. It is the fuel that keeps the system running.
Keeps it all going. All right. Next up, we have boundaries.
Right.
So what's that about?
Well, boundaries are crucial because they define a living organism as separate from its surroundings. Whether it's a cell membrane or skin, that boundary acts as a control point.
Okay.
It dictates what can go in and out of the organism, and it maintains the internal environment necessary for life.
So the boundaries are like the walls. Like the walls of that miniature city, protecting it, right, and regulating its interactions with the outside world.
Exactly. Perfect analogy.
All right, and finally, we have replication.
Replication. This is how life continues. It's the ability of living things to make copies of themselves.
Right, passing on that genetic information.
Exactly. Without replication, life as we know it wouldn't exist.
All right, so we have those 4 pillars: complexity, metabolism, boundaries, and replication. I think I'm starting to get a better grasp on what actually makes something alive, but it still begs the question, where did those first building blocks of life even come from?
Yeah, that's a really big question. And one theory that has really sparked debate for years is the panspermia theory.
Panspermia.
Yeah, it's a pretty wild idea. Basically, it suggests that the building blocks of life might have originated in space.
Wait, are we talking aliens?
Not necessarily fully formed aliens, but more like the basic ingredients of life.
Okay.
Scientists have actually found complex organic molecules in space. We're talking amino acids, sugars, even alcohols.
Space alcohol. I need to try some of that.
Yeah, right.
So basically what you're saying is the universe is like this giant cosmic kitchen, brewing up all the stuff needed for life.
Yeah, I like that. James Lovelock, a scientist, once said that the universe is a warehouse of spare parts for life.
Interesting way to put it. But even if all those parts are floating out there in space, how did they come together on Earth to form life?
Well, that's where the primordial soup hypothesis comes in.
The primordial soup. Okay.
Yeah, picture early Earth.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
A hot, volatile place, volcanoes erupting, lightning storms raging.
Sounds intense.
Yeah, very intense. And then picture a warm little pond, rich in all sorts of inorganic molecules. This pond is getting zapped by lightning, heated by volcanic activity, and according to the primordial soup hypothesis, this could have been the spark that ignited the very first organic molecules.
So a dash of lightning, some heat, water, and boom life.
Well, not exactly boom, but that's the general idea.
But did they ever test this out, like in a lab?
They did. In 1953, Stanley Miller and Harold Urey did this amazing experiment. They basically recreated the conditions of early Earth in the lab. They took inorganic gases, methane, ammonia, water vapor, sealed them in a system, added a start to simulate lightning, and guess what? They produced amino acids.
No way. They really made life in a jar.
Not quite life, but
they made the building blocks.
they showed that it was possible to create those building blocks from non-living matter under the right conditions.
Wow, that is pretty amazing. But even with amino acids, we're still talking about a pretty basic soup, right? How do we get from that to something that can actually replicate and pass on genetic information?
That's where things get even more interesting. We need to talk about clay.
Clay, like the stuff you make pots out of?
The very same. According to the clay mineral hypothesis, clay, with its unique charged surfaces, could have acted like a catalyst, attracting those organic molecules, helping them bond and forming even more complex structures.
So it's like clay was this primordial matchmaker, bringing all these molecules together.
Exactly. And some scientists believe that clay might have even been involved in the formation of RNA, the molecule that some think was a precursor to DNA.
RNA came before DNA. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, this is the RNA world hypothesis. See, RNA can both store genetic information and act as a catalyst, speeding up reactions.
Yeah.
It's a very talented molecule.
Multi-talented.
Yeah.
So RNA can make copies of itself, it evolves, and eventually leads to DNA for storing that information long term.
Exactly. But RNA is delicate.
Yeah.
So how did it survive in that chaotic early Earth environment?
Good question. Yeah.
Well, think about washing your hands with soap.
Besides getting rid of the germs, what happens?
The soap molecules form these little bubbles.
Yeah.
And those bubbles trap all the dirt and oil.
Right.
Well, it turns out fatty acids, which we call lipids, can do something similar. They form these tiny spheres in water, creating a barrier around other molecules.
So like the first cells were basically soap bubbles.
It's a good analogy. These lipid spheres, called protocells, could have encapsulated RNA and other molecules, providing a safe and stable environment for them to interact and evolve.
Okay, I'm with you so far. So we have these protocells with RNA inside, but they need energy to do anything, right? Where did they get that energy from?
To answer that, we have to go deep, deep down into the ocean, to hydrothermal vents. These vents spew out hot, mineral-rich water, creating a potential energy source for early life. So the hydrothermal vent theory basically proposes that protocells near these vents could have absorbed nutrients from that water for energy, a really primitive form of metabolism.
So the ocean floor was basically an all-you-can-eat buffet for these early cells. Amazing. But was it all peaceful in this primordial soup? Were these protocells getting along?
Well, probably not all the time. You see, as these protocells moved away from those nutrient-rich vents, they would have started competing for resources.
Ah, makes sense.
And this competition likely led to the development of two key strategies: predation, where cells consumed other cells, and mutualism, where cells cooperated for mutual benefit.
Wow, so even in this primordial soup, we see the beginnings of eat or be eaten, and also better together.
Precisely. And these strategies are still crucial to the complex web of life we see today. Think about a bee pollinating a flower, that's mutualism, or a lion hunting a zebra, that's predation at work.
So we've gone from this simple soup of molecules to protocells competing and cooperating, and this is setting the stage for the next big leap in evolution, multicellular life. But how did those single cells make that jump to become complex organisms like us?
That is a great question, and we'll have to save that for the next part of our deep dive.
All right, so we've made it from stardust to that primordial soup, from the first single cells to those amazing protocells.
It's been quite a journey.
It really has. But now I'm really curious about how we went from those tiny little protocells to the incredible diversity of multicellular life that we see today. I mean, the jump from a single cell to, like, a giant redwood tree just seems almost impossible.
It's a truly remarkable transition, absolutely.
Yeah.
And to understand it, I think we need to introduce two key players in the story of life.
Okay.
Prokaryotes and eukaryotes.
Okay, those ring a bell. I remember learning about those back in school.
Yeah.
Prokaryotes are like bacteria, right?
Exactly. Bacteria and archaea are both prokaryotes.
Okay.
And these single-celled organisms, they're incredibly adaptable and successful.
Yeah.
They were the first forms of life to evolve on Earth, and they really paved the way for everything that came after.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And eukaryotes, those are the more complex cells that make up plants and animals, right?
Precisely. And that's where things get really, really interesting, because scientists now believe that eukaryotes actually evolved from a merger between bacteria and archaea.
A merger. So like two companies combining forces. How does that even work with cells?
Well, imagine a bacterium being engulfed by an archaeon, but instead of being digested, that bacterium kind of strikes up a partnership with its host. And over a very, very long time, that partnership becomes so close that they essentially become a single, more complex organism.
Wow.
A eukaryote.
So two became one, and that one went on to give rise to all the plants and animals on Earth.
It's a pretty amazing story.
It is. It's
Yeah.
like a cellular love story or something.
Yeah, exactly. And there's actually pretty strong evidence to support this theory, too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's called the endosymbiotic theory.
Okay.
And it focuses on mitochondria, those tiny organelles that produce energy in eukaryotic cells.
Oh, yeah, mitochondria, the powerhouses of the cell.
Exactly. The endosymbiotic theory says that mitochondria were once free-living bacteria that were engulfed by archaea,
Okay.
but instead of being digested, they developed this mutually beneficial relationship.
Yeah.
They provided the host cell with energy, and in return, they got a safe haven and a steady supply of nutrients.
So it's a win-win for everyone involved.
Exactly, a win-win.
But is there any actual proof that mitochondria used to be independent bacteria?
There is. In the 1960s, a biologist named Lynn Margulis made a groundbreaking discovery.
Okay.
She found that mitochondria actually have their own DNA, completely separate from the DNA in the cell's nucleus. And get this, that mitochondrial DNA closely resembles the DNA of a type of bacteria called typhus.
Wow, so it's like a cellular fingerprint
Exactly.
linking mitochondria back to their bacterial roots.
Exactly. It's pretty amazing.
That is really amazing. Wow.
Yeah, it's really cool stuff.
So this bacterial merger, it wasn't just some random event. It was actually crucial to the evolution of complex life.
It absolutely was. It gave these newly formed eukaryotic cells a massive energy boost. And with all that extra energy, they could support larger and more complex genomes, which led to the evolution of much more intricate structures and functions.
Okay.
It's kind of like going from a small town to a bustling metropolis.
I like that analogy.
Yeah.
So this merger was a big, big deal.
It was a game changer, for sure.
But I'm still trying to wrap my head around how we go from those single-celled eukaryotes to things like jellyfish and redwood trees.
Right.
How did they make that leap to becoming multicellular?
Well, that transition to multicellularity, it's still an area of active research. But scientists have some really interesting theories.
Okay.
One idea is that environmental pressures might have played a key role.
Okay.
Imagine a world where resources are becoming scarce or the environment's going through some really dramatic changes.
Yeah.
In those situations, it might have been beneficial for single-celled organisms to band together, to cooperate,
Right.
to increase their chances of survival.
So strengthen numbers.
Exactly. By forming a multicellular unit, they could share resources more efficiently, defend themselves better against predators, and even specialize in different tasks, just like we talked about before.
Right. So like become a team.
Yeah, well-oiled team.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Are there any other theories out there about what might have triggered multicellularity?
Yeah, there's another really interesting possibility.
Right.
That maybe it was a more random event, like a chance mutation,
Okay.
that gave a group of cells a survival advantage.
Okay.
Imagine a mutation that caused cells to stick together after they divide.
All right.
If that clump of cells was better able to survive and reproduce, that trait would get passed on, right?
Yeah.
And that could lead to the evolution of multicellular organisms.
So it could have just been like a lucky break,
A lucky break, yeah.
a genetic lottery that ended up shaping the whole trajectory of life on Earth.
Exactly. It really highlights how unpredictable evolution can be.
Right, right.
Sometimes these small changes can have massive consequences over millions of years.
It really is mind-boggling when you think about all those twists and turns that led from those first, really simple cells to all the amazing diversity of life we see today.
It's an incredible story.
It is, and we owe it all to that one special ancestor, LUCA.
Yeah,
LUCA.
LUCA is a really powerful testament to how interconnected all life on Earth truly is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Every living thing, from the tiniest bacterium to the largest whale, can trace its lineage all the way back to that single-celled organism that popped up billions of years ago.
It really makes you feel connected to, like every other living thing on the planet, doesn't it?
It really does.
We're all part of this grand, unbroken chain of life
We are.
that stretches back to the very beginnings of our planet.
Yeah, it's humbling.
It is humbling.
For sure.
It's been amazing exploring these ideas with you,
Likewise.
from the primordial soup to the rise of multicellular life.
Yeah.
It's been a mind-blowing deep dive into the origins of life, honestly.
It has been. It really has.
But as you said, there are still some missing pieces of this puzzle, right?
There are.
What do scientists think triggered that shift, that crucial shift to multicellularity?
That's one of the big, big mysteries that researchers are still trying to figure out,
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of really fascinating theories out there, but we don't have a definitive answer yet.
Okay, well, let's dive into those theories then.
Right.
What are some of the leading contenders? So we've talked about a lot of fascinating theories, right?
We have, yeah. It's a really complex topic.
It is. From the primordial soup to those first single cells, making that incredible jump to multicellularity.
Right.
It's amazing how life on Earth went from, something so simple to the complexity we see today.
Yeah, it really is.
But like you said, there are still some missing pieces of the puzzle.
There are, absolutely.
What do scientists actually think was the trigger for that really big shift to multicellularity?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
Like I said, there are a lot of different theories floating around out there, but there's no definitive answer yet.
Okay, well, let's dive into those theories then.
Right.
What are some of the top contenders?
Well, one idea is that environmental pressures played a major role.
Okay.
Imagine a world where resources are becoming scarce or the environment is undergoing some pretty dramatic changes.
Yeah, I can imagine that.
In those kinds of situations, it might have been really advantageous for single-celled organisms to band together, to cooperate, to increase their chances of survival.
Right, like safety in numbers.
Exactly. Strength in numbers.
Strength in numbers, yeah.
By forming a multicellular unit, they could do things like share resources much more efficiently, defend themselves better against predators,
Right.
and even specialize in different tasks like we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Are there any other theories out there about what could have triggered this whole multicellularity thing?
There is another really interesting possibility.
Okay, what's that?
It's possible it was a more random event, like a chance mutation,
Okay.
that gave a group of cells an advantage.
Right.
So picture this. A mutation occurs, and it causes cells to stick together after they divide.
Okay.
Now, if that clump of cells happens to be better at surviving and reproducing,
Yeah.
well, then that trait is going to get passed down.
Right.
And that could eventually lead to the evolution of multicellular organisms.
So kind of a lucky break.
Yeah, you could say that, like winning the genetic lottery.
Wow, that's really fascinating.
Yeah. It's amazing to think that a single random event could have shaped the entire trajectory of life on Earth.
It really is mind-blowing when you think about all those twists and turns, all those random events that led from those first simple cells to this incredible diversity of life we see today.
It's remarkable.
It is. And to think we owe it all to that one special ancestor, LUCA.
LUCA, yeah.
It really is a testament to, the interconnectedness of all life on Earth.
Absolutely.
Everything.
Everything.
From the tiniest bacteria to the largest whale can trace its lineage back to that one single-celled organism.
It'd be pretty wild, right?
It is wild. It really makes you feel connected to every other living thing on this planet.
It really does.
Like we're all part of this grand, unbroken chain of life,
We are.
stretching back billions of years.
Billions of years. It's incredible.
It's humbling.
It is very humbling.
It's been amazing exploring these ideas with you today.
The pleasure was all mine.
From the primordial soup to the rise of multicellular life.
Right.
It's been a truly mind-expanding deep dive into the very origins of life.
It has been. And the best part is, the journey of discovery doesn't end here.
That's true.
Who knows what other mysteries future scientists will uncover about the origins of life.
That is so true, and that's what makes science so exciting.
Absolutely.
There's always more to learn, more questions to ask,
Ways.
more mysteries to unravel.
Exactly.
And who knows, maybe one day we'll find evidence of life beyond Earth.
Wouldn't that be amazing?
Right. Maybe with completely different origins and evolutionary paths.
Yeah, that would be incredible.
It would be. It would be.
Mind-blowing.
Well, for now, we'll just have to keep exploring the wonders of life here on Earth.
That's a good place to start.
Thanks for joining me on this deep dive. It's been a real pleasure.
The pleasure was all mine, honestly. Until next time, keep that curiosity alive. Never stop exploring the wonders of the universe.
And remember, everyone, we're all made of stardust, and that's something truly amazing.